Good morning. Good morning. Happy Sunday morning. My name is Reverend Ron Card, and this is the Sunday Morning Message, and it is sponsored by the Centers for Spiritual Living in Carlsbad, California. One morning, an old Cherokee man told his grandson about a battle that happens inside of people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside of us. One is evil, it is anger, envy, jealousy, regret, greed, arrogance. It is resentment, lies, self pity, guilt, and fear. And the other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, empathy, compassion, and faith, and truth." And the grandson, he just kind of pondered for a few minutes, and then he asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" And the old Cherokee man replied, "The one that you feed." So I guess my question to each one of you, as well as to myself, is which one do you or do I feed? And what I want to talk about this morning is love and fear. I feel that these two powers, these two energies, affect each one of us as to which wolf we really feed. I think we understand the concept that fear is the opposite of love. But yet, if you really think about it, the two are identical in the sense that the energy that is used for one is the same energy that is used for the other. Interesting, isn't it? Each day our lives are filled with choices. And I feel that these choices that we are confronted with are the wolves inside of each one of us. The direction is determined by which wolf do we feed. I also feel that, most fears are summarized in false beliefs about not only ourselves, but about the conditions that arise around us. I've had at times thoughts that, I'm not enough, or I'm not needed, I'm not needed, or I'm not smart enough. And yet, how many times have you said to yourself that you wanted to be prosperous, that you wanted that car or that home or the job? In the same thought, you saw all the reasons why it wasn't going to happen. I've been with my wife, and we've been driving around, and I see this nice sporty car and I love it. It's like, wow, I could see myself right in it. Say, I really like to have that. But then I start thinking, how can I have that on the job that I have? I'm not making enough income. It's only a two-seater. It really would be impractical for both of. I start making all these excuses up on why it can't happen. Instead of drawing it to me, I'm pushing it away. It's almost like we make up excuses about why we don't succeed or why we didn't succeed. And when we do that, we feed the wolf that keeps us from what we would like to do, be, or have. About 2 weeks ago, I got COVID-19. And believe me, I was beside myself because I've tried so hard not to get it. Wearing my mask, social distancing, getting the shots, everything. But what happened is I started getting a little temperature. I got really weak, went to bed, started getting a little sore throat. And so what I did is I went and I got tested. And the test came back positive. At first, when I looked on the screen and saw the word positive, I could feel the fear of having COVID-19. I could almost feel the fear of it getting worse because I didn't want it to. But I began thinking about all the things that you hear on TV, about what's going on, not only in this country, but around the world, how people are dying from this, getting really sick. Also, what others have told me about it, and about the friends and the relatives dying from this COVID-19. It's been I've had some people very close to me pass away. I feared going to the hospital. I feared being put on a ventilator. And I started looking and expecting to find maybe new symptoms coming up besides the sore throat or, not having any energy, lack of energy and stuff. And every time I took my temperature, I, I could just kind of feel it, just moving a little higher and higher. But then I began thinking about my talk. This talk that I'm talking about this morning, I was supposed to actually have 2 weeks ago. And the Thursday before my talk is when I got sick. It's when I went to bed because I didn't feel like I had any energy. And, I just felt like something was going on. And it just kept getting worse. And Saturday, I finally, told, Reverend Kate that I just had to postpone the talk, that somebody else had to do it. I just couldn't do it. I didn't have the energy. But I started thinking about what wolf am I feeding? I mean, think about all the things that I just said. Whatever your dominant thought is, that is the wolf that you're feeding. So what I did is I began to seeing my conditions on where I was, how I was, as well as myself differently. I really feel that in order to change this, I had to change the way I was thinking, to change the way I was seeing things. Through prayer, through resting, medication, changing how I saw myself, I began feeling better. Not all at once, but little by little. I feel I chose the right wolf. And it's a choice that we all have, not only about this, but about everything that happens in our lives. I have been in this teaching, Science of Mind, for over 25 years. I'm an ordained minister in this teaching. And I believe with my heart, that each one of us is a spiritual being having a human experience. I believe in one power, and that power is God. And God is right here with us. But I also believe that this one power is love, because that's what God is, love. And that's what we are. There is also the human side to us, the human experiences that we have, and the belief that there are two powers, because sometimes it really feels that way. Fear arises from the false belief that there are the two powers. However, it is through this fear in two powers that we will always victimize ourselves. And in doing so, we fail to take responsibility that we are the ones in control of our thoughts, of our feelings, and emotion. Think about what I just said. Our thoughts, feelings, and emotion. That puts us in control of our lives. We, each one of us are so powerful, we control what happens to us. But we give that away through fear. I feel that the fear we feel comes from the outside. It doesn't come from inside us. It comes from the outside. When we blame something that is outside of us as the cause of how we feel, we miss the opportunity to improve relationships with not only ourselves, but relationships that we have with others around us. One of the things I firmly believe, and I strive to do myself all the time, and that is to live life consciously. Because so much of the time we live it unconsciously. We make choices and we say things without even realizing it. Many times, we struggle to figure out why life is unfolding the way it is. And we don't even know what it is we were thinking, which wolf we were even feeding. But we must begin to see and realize that fear is a mental attitude. And when we begin to see it for what it is, we can observe the fear and we can examine it, converting that thought into one of faith. Because faith is how you move through fear. The faith in yourself, the faith knowing things are better. By learning to face our fears, we learn that there is nothing to fear. I see fear now, and I've learned that fear is false evidence appearing real because it appears so real. Many times have I feared doing something, and once I've done it, I couldn't understand why I was so afraid. I mean, what was the fear here? And what I've come to realize is the life it has is the life that we give it. We give fear life, and we need to stop that. We need to develop faith. We need to develop the knowing that we are spiritual beings having human experiences. We need to develop the truth that we control. We are the captains of our ship. We control our lives. We make the choices. Many of you are aware that I have moved. And from the time that we decided to sell our house, which was, way back in August, early September of last year, until we moved in January, I'm not kidding you, was a very wild ride. I learned so much about the wolf I was feeding. And sometimes it was hard as to which wolf I was feeding. Our house had fell out of escrow once, and we struggled to find a place to rent back here. We wanted to move back in Tennessee, Maryville. And we heard horror stories about moving companies and how their prices tripled and quadrupled, and that it would take months for our stuff to get back there. Just all kinds of horror stories. Thinking back now, I can honestly say that whatever wolf I fed, that actually happened. And so that's why I want to talk about this morning also, because we can change the wolf that we're feeding into a more positive life for each one of us. Many of us feel our fears are so real that they become our reality. And if you can just slow things down, just slow them down a little bit, you can begin to see the wolf that you are feeding. And that's where the power is. That's where you get your power in life. When our house fell out of escrow, we could have fed the wolf that said, I'm not going to sell it. I'm just going to take it off the market. It's just not the right time. Could have made up all kinds of excuses. I could have played along with it. But instead, we visioned that it was already sold. We saw how fast they were selling on the market. We're seeing that everywhere. We kept packing and we kept downsizing. We kept taking one step forward. We kept feeding the right wolf. And when we couldn't find a place to rent back east, back in Maryville, Tennessee, where we were moving, we could have just given up. We could have said, let's stop looking. When we get back there, we'll have to either rent a motel for a couple of weeks, or we'll have to see if we got a relative that's close that we can live with. We could have washed into all that. We could have fed that wolf. Instead, we did prayer. We visioned on the right and perfect place. And we kept talking to people back there. We kept feeding the right wolf. We just knew, we just felt it from within that it's coming. The right place is here. And we found the right moving company. Once you begin to move forward, once you begin to move in a positive direction, everything just seems to fall in place. And once you develop that faith, and the important thing was, I followed my intuition. because that is spirit speaking through me. I look at life as spirit unfolding into more of itself through me. I'm here to give God a good time. And so I follow and I listen to that intuition. And what I have learned is to put aside your fear by loving it. To love the fear, we must call the power and the presence of God into our lives, or whatever that particular situation is, allowing the presence to dispel the fear. Because you finally realize that fear is just made up in your own mind. It's your own imagination. The moment we realize that we are in the midst of fear, we must not struggle to get away from it. Rather, we must relax and declare the truth. The truth is, we did have a place to come back here and live. The truth is, we did sell our house. The truth is, I did get better. The truth is, I let COVID 19 go because it's the truth that sets us free. Let us invoke this truth by saying, wherever I am, there is God. Let there be light in me. Each one of us is a light of the world. Yes. We must remember that our thoughts and our words are energy, very powerful. And it is this creative energy that sets life in motion. Thoughts and words are so powerful. They are the cause of our feelings and our emotions. So that is why it's, so important. I know I do this all the time. I check, where am I? What am I feeling? What is my emotions right now? And this is why I continually say, live life consciously, because the only way you can determine where you are and what wolf you're feeding is by being in the present. Be aware of your thoughts and words, and we must use them responsibly. We must remember that love is our nature. This is who we are. And when we're off that track of love, then we need to pay attention and move through that to get back on the road to our nature. It is only through facing situations that trigger our fears. You know, we will begin to mature and transform ourselves, finding within ourselves unimaginable, unimaginable resources. You know, what could God not do? We're invoking spirit. The cause of my fear is not knowing who I really am and how powerful I am. It's stripping that away from ourselves. But what I have learned is fear is a tool of the ego, which really means to me edging out God. So when we are feeling fear, when we are allowing fear to run our lives, what we are doing, we are edging God out. I know for me, growing up, I was afraid of being alone, especially in the dark. Oh, I had a terrible time. My uncle used to be really mean to me. He used to send me down in the basement, and the lights were all off. And I always thought the boogeyman was going to get me. I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid, too, in school of being worthless or incapable of doing projects and stuff. But what I have come to realize is that one that does not love themselves lives in fear, feeling constantly insecure and attracting to their lives people and situations that support that. That is why we must begin to see, who are we attracting in our lives? What kind of conditions are unfolding in our lives? What are we thinking? Because that's the key that can tell us what we need to do to break free. I can see now that a lot of the fears and insecurities that I have had stem from growing up. And I'm learning how to work through my insecurities and my fears. Every day is school for me. I learned something different. I learned something different going through the COVID 19. I learned something different selling my house. I learned something different in my relationship with my wife. I learned something different all the time. Fear and worry and stress weaken and depress our immune system. They keep life off balance for us, and they keep opportunities out of reach for us. Because when we are going through fear, we're pushing away the good. This is why it is so important to see which wolf you are feeding. As we develop peace and serenity, balance and respect, integrity and honesty, not only towards ourselves, but we can see and release ways in which we may be harming ourselves. We can release that, and also for others. Remember, fear comes from a false belief. And if we continue to feed them every day, we give them more power. It's us that gives them power, no one else. Fear has kept us in ignorance and managed us through guilt, blame, and shame. And so when you feel that, when you feel guilt, or when you feel blame, or when you are shamed, think about the wolf you're feeding. Remember, the first step when an emotion arises is to recognize it, to identify the fear, and to know that I have the option to choose love and not fear, that I have a power within me that I can use. We say this all the time at church. We say this all the time in Science of Mind, that there is a power for good in the universe and we can use it. It's there all the time. It is with us. Remember, just remember, the first step when an emotion arises is to recognize it. We must remember that we must be the change that we would like to see. If you'd like to see something better in your life, see yourself in that change. If you'd like to attract more into your life, more prosperity, a home or whatever, see it in your life. See the truth. Continually ask yourself and be conscious of which wolf you are feeding. I want to thank you for being with me this morning. It's really been nice having you. Please join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We have a Sunday morning message. Next week, I believe Reverend Kate will be speaking, and I hope I'll be back the following week. But until then, please have a good Sunday, have a good day, and I will talk to you later.